Hey there, and welcome to Geopolitics Africa. And I said Africa because I want to talk to Africans. How do you feel when you look at the African map? Does it make you feel inferior, superior, or do you think that the continent is a dot in the global space? Well, if you've been feeling that like it makes you feel small or it looks smaller than it should be, this is your chance. So the African Union is backing a campaign to replace the 16th century Mercator map of the world with one that is more accurate and depicts the proper African size. Because as it is, that map represents Africa as a dot in the world, while in essence, Africa is way bigger than most of the continents. So the projection of the map used by many governments and international organizations, as well as schools, tech companies, as it is, it distorts the size of some continents, enlarging North America while shrinking Africa and South America. Of course, now critics argue that the Mercator's distortions shape how Africa is seen in education, media, policy, and this, of course, influences our identity and as Africans and the pride we carry, especially among children, because these things you are taught as a child. So as you grow up, you grow thinking that Africa is a very small space. And maybe that is why we are going through some of the things we're going through as Africans, or that's why we are treated as small or minor when it comes to global issues. So now there's a campaign that has come up to adopt the map that depicts Africa as it should be. So campaigners want equal earth adopted in African schools by global bodies such as the UN, the World Bank, because these are people who influence how decisions are made across the world. So if we are able to adopt what we're calling equal earth, then we are able, in terms of even resource distribution on the global space, policies that affect how Africa is treated, because it will give a clear picture of what Africa is. Then if that is adopted, it's easier for Africa to, have a space on the big table. So the move challenges the centuries of distorted geography. And it's very key because geography determines a lot of things. I know the map was done for navigation purposes by Mercator himself, but this navigation now has shifted to policy making. And with the effect on policy making, then it's affected how Africa is treated. So the AU is backing the Correct Map campaign, advocating for the global adoption of the Equal Earth projection. Current map feels that it's been misrepresenting Africa's true size and geopolitical significance. And that's why I'm saying in some spaces where even on the Security Council, maybe that's why Africa has no permanent seat, while other continents are well represented. So that's something that is key for Africa. Africa covers about 30.37 million square kilometers. That is large enough to fit the United States, China, India, and most of the Europe combined. But when you look at the map, the US actually looks way bigger than us. If you look at the map of China, India, they're well represented. They actually look bigger than a continent of 55 countries. So, and even Europe actually looks way bigger than what it is on the map. Of course, this took the whole idea of navigation because they were using the oceans to move around. So that was why the map looks that way. But even then, it questions why it's just the black continent that was made to look small. I mean, we would have done a bigger way. Represent the route, but make it look large. Anyway, the design, of course, is what has caused distorting of the land masses, especially around the equator, where the equator passes like here in Kenya. If you look at the map of Kenya, it looks like a very tiny space. So essentially, the way the African continent is represented on the map, it looks about 14 times smaller than it should be. And with this, the African Union has come on board to try and see if that can be corrected. So Salma Malika Haddadi, who's the deputy chairperson of the AU Commission, said that it might seem to be just a map, but in reality, it is not just a map. So she argues that the current design has long fostered the false impression that Africa is marginal, despite being the world's second largest continent by area with over 1 billion people. So essentially what she's saying is, we might look at it as just a small map. It's just a map anyway. It has no impact. But that tells you even when people sit in the high places or in offices where decisions are being made in the World Security Council, that's why most we will be denied some of these positions because they look at it and they're like, well, Africa is just a small continent. There's nothing much going on there. And so these are the things we say must be fixed. I mean, they have been there, they have been taken as normal, but there comes a time when things must be corrected for proper representation. And for this, I personally actually applaud African Union and say that this is something they must push. I know African Union hasn't met a lot of the things we have wanted them to as citizens, but at least this is something you can push for. There are other things you can try and push for wars to end. You can try and push for feeding the African continent and ensuring that our resources are fairly bought on the international market and trading, and demanding that they come and open processing companies in Kenya or in Africa instead of getting this our resources such as gold, copper, and exporting them and giving us just very small tax. You can fight for all those things, but maybe if we fix them up, then it will help push other agendas. So that's a good step as it is. So the Equal Earth projection was introduced in 2018 by a team of cartographers, which offers a more accurate representation of the land masses that we have. Unlike the Mercator projection, it minimizes the distortion and provides a more realistic view of the continent's relative sizes. So the AU, along with advocacy groups like Africa No Filter and Speak Up Africa, are actually urging that educational institutions, governments, international organizations must adopt this projection because it will cultivate a thing in the minds of everyone and true knowledge and representation of what Africa is for the world. So the adoption of the Equal Earth projection will have significant implications for education and policy, because even in decision making, when people sit at the global level, then they will be talking, when you talk of Africa being this huge and having this huge number of people, over 1 billion, then that's in terms of resources distribution and fairness, then that will be something. So they also want that most in the education sector across Africa, that students will receive a more accurate understanding of their continent size, and even understand how we have all these natural resources and landmass. And maybe with that, we will think better of how we can use this land. Because if as a country you understand how big you have land for agriculture, then your mind will be challenged to make use of that land than being told we have this small continent, it can do farming, but when you look at the land, it doesn't look on the map, doesn't give you the idea of what you can do with it. So that's the shift could actually influence everything from geography curriculum to international trade policies when you're setting, and it will foster a more accurate and better understanding of Africa's role in global affairs, and also our understanding as Africans. So the AU's call for a new map is not just about cartography. It's about reshaping perceptions and asserting Africa's place in the world, because we need to assert. For a long time as Africans, we've been treated as, lower class citizens, as less of human beings. But I think if we're able to change some of these things, then we are heading in the right direction. So by challenging the dominance of the Mercator projection, the AU is also advocating for a more equitable representation of all continents. And this will, of course, help push for different ideas at the global space. So as an African, tell us in the comment space what you think about this, how you feel about it, and what the current map has made you feel in the past, and what you think how the new map will shape or make you feel about yourself and your continent. Thank you for watching Geopolitics 411. We'll see you on the next episodes.